concise history of Prophet Muhammad SAW. Al-Hudaibiyah Treaty Part 2, Chapter 12.1b. Please note that this presentation is in continuation of Chapter 12.1a. Muslims' reaction to the Al-Hudaibiyah Treaty. There were some clauses of the treaty which apparently looked very insulting to the Muslims. For example, Umar radiallahu anhu asked the Prophet SAW during the negotiation of the treaty, "Are you not Prophet of Allah?" The Prophet replied, "I am indeed the Prophet of Allah." Umar asked, "Are we not on the truth and enemy on the falsehood?" The Prophet said, "Yes, indeed." Umar said, "Then why are we accepting a few insulting clauses of the treaty?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "I am Prophet of Allah. I cannot disobey Allah. Allah will help me. That's all I can say." Then Umar radiallahu anhu said, "Did you not promise us that we will go around Kaaba and have our hair cut?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "Yes, I did, but I did not say that it will definitely occur this year." After this, Umar radiallahu anhu went to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and asked him the same questions, and Abu Bakr gave him the same answers as the Prophet ﷺ did. Finally, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said to Umar harshly, "You better obey and follow the Prophet ﷺ till you die, since I swear by Allah, he is on the truth." It clearly shows that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had analyzed this treaty on his own, and his thinking was exactly the same as that of the Prophet ﷺ. It also proves the superiority of Abu Bakr over Umar radiallahu anhu and other companions, of course. Note that Umar radiallahu anhu was reacting like this due to his sincere love for Islam. He did not mean to be rude in any way. In spite of this, later on, Umar radiallahu anhu became very worried for this reaction, and he said, "I used to observe voluntary fasting, salat and charity to make up this weakness." This given in Bukhari. It teaches us a lesson that we should blame our own thinking and not the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in Islamic matters. Finishing state of Ihram. After writing the treaty, the Prophet ﷺ asked his companions to sacrifice their animals. They did not move at all, since they were very depressed like Umar radiallahu anhu, due to some clauses of the treaty. The Prophet ﷺ instructed them thrice with no results. The Prophet ﷺ went to Salma radiallahu anha and described the situation to her. She was very intelligent and excellent in decision making. She humbly suggested, "O Prophet of Allah, you should sacrifice your animal without saying anything to others, and you should shave your head to finish the state of Ihram." Inshallah, others will follow you. The Prophet ﷺ followed her advice, and the companions promptly followed the Prophet ﷺ. The Muslims sent some meat to their the Muslims sent some meat of their slaughtered animals to the idolaters. The Prophet ﷺ sacrificed Abu Jahl's camel, which had a silver ring in his nose, and it was part of the booty of Badr. When idolaters received the meat of this camel, it caused them lot of torture and grief. During the journey from Hudaibiyah to Medina, Surah Al-Fatah was revealed. The Prophet ﷺ told Umar that, as stated in this surah, Treaty of Hudaibiyah is the clear-cut victory for Muslims, since it paved the way for the conquest of Makkah. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Tonight I have received a surah which I love more than the whole world." This is in Bukhari. Allah praised the companions a lot in this surah, Surah Al-Fatah, verse 26. إذ جعل الذين كفروا في قلوبهم حمية الجاهلية فأنزل الله سكينته على رسوله وعلى المؤمنين وألزمهم كلمة التقوى وكانوا أحق بها وأهلها وكان الله بكل شيء عليما. When the disbelievers had put in their hearts haughtiness, the haughtiness of time of ignorance, but Allah sent down calmness and tranquility upon His messenger and upon the believers, and made them to adhere to piety, and they were truly entitled to it and worthy of it, and Allah is all-knowing of everything. Hence, after reading this verse, no one should dare to say anything against the companions. Allah stated in Quran many times, Radiyallahu anhum wa radu anh. Allah is pleased with them and they are pleased with Allah. Note that one time it rained heavily during the stay in Hudaibiyah, and it was announced, Sallu fi rihalikum, pray in your tents. Hence it is allowed to pray in our homes during heavy rain, etc. Also note that during the journey from Hudaibiyah to Medina, one time the whole Muslim army happened to sleep at Fajr Salat time. Hence the Prophet and the companions offered Fajr Salah during the day. Ruling about immigrant Muslim women. It is in Bukhari that after some time, a few Muslim women migrated to Medina. The idolaters demanded their return according to the terms of the treaty. The Prophet said, the wording in the treaty is, this agreement is made with the condition that if a man from us joins you, if a man from us joins you, then you must return him to us, even though he is on your religion. The Prophet ﷺ said, in this treaty, women are not mentioned at all. Hence, women will not be returned. In the meanwhile, the following verse was revealed. Surah Al-Mumtahina, verse 10. O you who believe, when believing women come to you as immigrants, cross-examine them about their faith. However, Allah knows their faith the best. If you conclude by apparent examination that they are true believers, don't send them back to the disbelievers. They are not lawful wives for the disbelievers, nor are the disbelievers lawful husbands for them, but give the disbelievers that amount of money which they have spent as their mahr on them. And it will not be sinful for you to marry them provided that you pay their mahr to them. Similarly, don't keep the disbelieving women as wives and ask for the return of that which you have spent as mahr, and let the disbelievers ask to return what they have spent. That is the command of Allah. He judges between you, and Allah is all knowing, all wise. Hence, Muslim women were not allowed to marry disbelieving men and vice versa. Following this command, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu divorced two disbelieving women. Muawiyah married the first woman, and Safwan bin Umayyah married the second. After this treaty during 7th Hijrah, Umar bin al-As, Khalid bin Walid, and Usman bin Talha embraced Islam. When they came to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ said, Quraysh have handed over to us its most beloved personalities, or Quraysh has given us its own blood. Subhanallah. Weak and oppressed Muslims. Abu Basir was one of the oppressed Muslims in Mecca. He somehow managed to reach Medina. Quraysh sent two men to return him according to the treaty. The Prophet ﷺ handed him over to them. When these three men reached Zil Hulayfa, Abu Basir said to one of them, I swear by Allah, you have a very nice sword. The person took out the sword and said, I swear by Allah, it is very nice. I have tested it many times. Abu Basir asked, May I look at it? He handed over this sword to Abu Basir, and Abu Basir killed the owner of the sword at the spot. The second person rushed to Medina and informed the Prophet ﷺ that his companion was murdered, and it is very likely that he will be killed too. After a short while, Abu Basir reached there too, and humbly said to the Prophet ﷺ, By returning me to them, you have fulfilled your promise, but Allah granted me freedom. The Prophet ﷺ said, This man intends to initiate war. Abu Basir realized that he would be handed over again to the idolaters. Hence he ran away from Medina and reached the ocean coast. Abu Jandal also managed to join Abu Basir. Gradually, other new Muslims of Makkah joined them too, and they formed a colony there. They started intercepting the caravans of Quraysh. The Quraysh were fed up with them, and they begged the Prophet by their ties of kinship to send for this group to Medina and cancel the clause in the treaty about it. The Prophet ﷺ sent for them, and they cheerfully went to Medina. Subhanallah. In this way, the problem of the weak and the oppressed Muslims of Makkah was solved. This in Bukhari and Muslim. Finally, important points regarding Hudaibiyah treaty. Number 1, the Quraysh were forced to accept Muslims equal to them since truce is made between equal parties. The Quraysh started to feel insecure, and as a result of this, their big leaders embraced Islam. Number 2, Muslims felt security and peace with this treaty, which they had never seen before. Hence, they started focusing on other problems. For example, to tackle the conspiracies and mischiefs of the Jews. Number 3, although the thinking of the Prophet ﷺ was always international, but he practically started the international activities after this treaty. For example, he wrote letters to various kings. Number 4, As a result of this treaty, the Muslims were recognized as independent sovereign state, and they settled their affairs with others as an independent sovereign state. Number 5. Now Muslims and idolaters started meeting in a peaceful atmosphere. As a result of this, many idolaters embraced Islam. The scholars consider this treaty a manifest victory for Islam. Hence, Islam spread through mutual interaction and not by sword. For example, Muslims were 1,400 at the time of the treaty, and shortly after this, they were 10,000 at the time of conquest of Mecca. The treaty granted, number 6, the treaty granted a very high status to Muslims. For example, the Prophet ﷺ said to the participants of this treaty, "You are the best persons on the surface of earth, and those of you who took pledge under the tree will not go to hell." This is in Bukhari and Muslim. Number 7. This treaty paved the way for the conquest of Mecca. Hence, this treaty was a manifest victory for the Muslims. Number 8. It was a miracle that Allah informed the Prophet in advance during his journey from Hudaibiyah to Medina what the villagers of Medina what the villagers of Medina who hung back would say to him. Surah Fatah, verse 11. Those villagers who stayed behind during the journey of Hudaibiyah will soon say to you on your arrival in Medina, "Our wealth and our families occupied us, hence we could not participate. So you please pray for our forgiveness." Allah said, "What they are saying with their tongues is not in their hearts." Say to them, "So who then has any courage to intervene on your behalf with Allah if He chooses to harm you or chooses to benefit you? In fact, Allah is well acquainted with what you do." Number 9. Not only this, but Allah also revealed the secret thinking of the hypocrites. Surah Fatah, verse 12 and verse 15. In fact, your thinking was that the messenger and the believers would never return to their families, i.e., idolaters will kill them all. This thinking was very appealing to your hearts, and you had an evil thought in your mind. In fact, you people deserved destruction. When you travel to collect the booty of war, the villagers who stayed behind will say, "Allow us to follow you." They intend to change the command of Allah. Now, what was the command of Allah? The command of Allah was that only those who were in the truce of Hudaybiyah can participate in the expedition of Khaybar. They will say, "You are not allowed to," you say to them, say to these disbelievers, "You are not allowed to follow us since Allah has already instructed about it." Then they will say, "In fact, you are jealous of us." Actually, they don't have much sense. Number 10. Allah also knew the state of mind of the sincere Muslims and blessed them with calmness and tranquility, as mentioned in Surah Fatah, verse 18. Indeed, Allah was highly pleased with the believers when they made pledge to you under the tree to be steadfast during the fighting. And Allah knew what is in their hearts. So Allah sent down calmness upon them, and apart from this favor, Allah gave them a physical reward of near victory, that means of Khaybar. Number 11, last point about the Hudaybiyah Treaty. Hudaybiyah was a psychological war in which Muslims achieved a manifest victory, a clear victory. Some legal or fiqh points about Treaty of Hudaibiyah. Number one, Muslims are allowed to have truce even with the worst enemy. Number two, if a person is unable to perform Hajj or Umrah due to some illness or hardship after getting in the state of Ihram, it is allowed to come out of the state of Ihram by fasting or sadaqah or by sacrificing the animal. Number three, it is allowed to take help from trusted non-Muslim against the disbelievers. Number four, if it is raining heavily, it is allowed to say in azan, Sallu fi buyutikum or Sallu fi rihalikum. Pray in your houses or in your tents. In such a situation, it is not proper to endanger your life. Number five, if you remain asleep and miss a prayer once or twice in your life, then make it up as soon as you wake up. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم.